Good evening, everyone. This is the CPOC Commissioners meeting. It is hereby called to order. The time is now 6:05 p.m. My name is Hassan Bennett. I am the interim chair of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, and I am here to facilitate this meeting. This is a public meeting of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission that was properly advertised pursuant to the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. With all commissioners present, I will now call roll. Commissioner John Solomon.
Present.
Commissioner Elder DeBose.
Present.
Commissioner Hakeem P.A.
Present.
I am Commissioner Hassan Bennett, and I am present. Next, we'll go on to Commissioner business. Has everyone had a chance to review the last meeting minutes of August 2024 and September 2024?
I have.
I have.
Okay.
Yes.
And now we'll go on to, do I have a motion for approval of those meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the meeting of the August and September meetings. Approve the minutes as written.
I second. Commissioner PA seconds.
All in favor say aye.
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 Next, we'll have discussion on the topic of the new bylaws. Catherine, Attorney Twigg circulated a portion of the new bylaws. Me and Attorney Twigg had a chance to review discrepancies in the current bylaws, and we now understand that it's certain things that call for bylaws and other things that would be called for policy. Did commissioners have a chance to review the proposal previously?
Yes.
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 We ask that you submit anything you would like to add to the bylaws in writing as we progress through this through the drafting of the new bylaws. Attorney Twigg, did I miss anything?
Nothing substantial. I just wanted to add on that, as I think you told the public last time around, we are trying to do this in a public way so that everyone on the commission gets a chance to deliberate and explain their reasons for including certain parts of the bylaws in front of the public. And also the public, if they have opinions, can express them during community comment. And also that these three initial provisions cover, everyone can see them, they're attached to the agenda if you're joining us from the public. The first provision is authority and purpose of this commission. The second provision governs meetings. And the third governs compliance with applicable law. These are very standard sort of introductory provisions, and we're hoping to introduce a couple of additional provisions at each meeting until we fill out a fulsome set of bylaws, and then at that point the commission would vote to in one go to adopt all the bylaws once they've developed. Is there anything else you wanted me to address, Chair?
No, there's nothing else. Is that clear with all commissioners?
It is.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is agency business. And with that, I'll turn it over to our executive director, Tanya McClure.
Good evening, everyone. Excited to be joining you for starting
my audio or
Ms. McClure, your audio's going in and out.
No.
I can see your mouth moving and I can hear you because you're only a foot away, but for some reason your audio is not working.
the volume's all the way up, so
We can hear you better now.
So, good evening, everybody, and I'm excited to be here for our now bi-weekly commission meeting starting this month. And so if we can go to the slides, we will talk about the things that the agency has been up to. And we're also doing something new starting this month. We're going to be having a discussion about some issues in oversight. So I'm looking forward to that. So we can go to the first slide. So the mission of the Civilian Police Oversight Commission is to oversee and investigate the conduct, policies, practices of the Philadelphia Police Department. And so CPOC currently reviews complaints of police misconduct, audit and monitors internal affairs investigations and police disciplinary processes, sits and votes on PBI panels at police discipline hearings, conducts oversight of police shootings, analyzes police data, develops policy recommendation and report, and engages in outreach and training. So I wanted to give an update on the seating of the new commissioners. Last month, I reported to the commissioners and the community that the commission had 4 to 5 vacant seats that needed to be filled on the commission. And I explained to people at the time the reason why we weren't sure of the exact number, because we had a commissioner was suspended, and a determination about the what would happen with that commissioner had not happened yet. But as an update, on September 26th, the commission voted to remove Commissioner Rosar Torres Thomas as a member of the board. So therefore, the number is now clear. The selection panel will be recommending a slate of 5 names for City Council to consider. So I wanted to just clear that up with the public. We now know that it will be 5 names that will be going forward. And just wanted to let people know that the selection panel is conducting interviews later this month. So just wanted to keep people abreast as we move forward about what's going on with the seating of what will be 5 commissioners. Next slide. And so I just wanted to remind people what the process is that CPOC does not have a say in who the new commissioners are going to be. I want to be very clear. The selection panel is composed of 3 appointees from City Council and 2 appointees from the mayor's office. So that is who makes up the selection panel. And so we've reported these names out before, but just to remind folks that Anton Moore and Stanley Crawford are the 2 people that were appointed by the mayor's office, and Bilal Kayun, Christina Vega, and Caroline Stack were the 3 people that were appointed by council. So those 5 people will be the ones that will be conducting the interviews and will recommend a slate of 5 names to go forward to council. We are also anticipating that when it's time to present that slate, that there will be some type of public hearing so that people will be able to perhaps even hear from the 5 nominees, so to speak, for the slate. We'll have a chance for people to be able to ask questions and for the community to weigh in. So we do want people to know that we are trying to ensure that there's community engagement throughout the entire selection process. And so with that, I'm excited to turn it over to our investigations unit. And so I'm going to turn it over to the Director of Investigations, and I'll be back a little later in this presentation to have a discussion with the commission.
Thank you, Tanya. Hi, everyone. This is Nick Cotto, the Director of Investigations for CPOC. There's a good amount of material I want to get through this evening, so we're just going to start working through these slides. First, with a regular update on police shootings. As background, we monitor and oversee police shootings in Philadelphia. This is every time a police officer discharges their firearm. We will respond. We will review body-worn camera footage if it exists. We'll review a full slate of other evidence related to that shooting to analyze whether that shooting complied with PPD's directives, with the law, and give our own understanding of the event. In September of 2024, there were no police shootings of people. That means that the year-to-date total remains at 9. There was 1 police shooting at a dog in September 2024. My understanding is that that dog was not struck by gunfire. Before we move on to this from this slide, I just want to pause and note that we did have an off-duty police shooting last Thursday. This would have been October 3rd, 2024. We've received a substantial amount of material from that incident that we are working on reviewing and understanding. But I wanted to flag for the commission that that incident is very much on our radar. We're working that job the same as we would work any other job, and look forward to providing an update once we are able to work through the material that we have. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so I wanted to report on the monitoring activities that the investigation unit is doing. As you're also aware, the unit monitors active civilian complaints. This sort of activity includes reviewing the initial complaint material that either comes directly to the office or is a complaint that's filed with IAD, which we identify and decide to monitor. It involves discussing the investigation and the investigation steps with IAD's investigators to make sure that they receive our input in terms of the direction of the investigation, the sorts of interviews that may be conducted, the sorts of questions that may be asked during interviews, so on and so forth. If there is body-worn camera footage, other video evidence, other documentary evidence, we'll receive that, review it, and analyze it so we can be informed about our recommendations as to the investigation. It also includes attending and participating in IAD's interviews. This is literally 90% of the time in person with the witness or the police officer. And in that process, we'll have time to ask questions and get information from that officer or that witness if we feel that that evidence is lacking in the interview. If we could go to the next slide, please. Great. This slide summarizes some of the complaints that we continue to monitor at IAD. I'll quickly go through some of these to give you a flavor of the sort of issues that we are monitoring and giving advice to the IAD investigators. So, for instance, we have a complainant who alleged he was approached on the street by patrol officers and asked if he was carrying any weapons. The complainant alleged that the officer gripped him and aggressively searched him, and that the officer grabbed his private area during that search. So we're obviously pretty keen on the search and seizure issues arising from that case and any potential uses of force that may arise from that complaint as well. Another monitoring case that we have, the complainant alleged that the police conducted a traffic stop of this vehicle and that the officers improperly searched the vehicle and used excessive force during the stop. So again, that is another search and seizure case, excessive force case that we're monitoring. The third case is that the complainant, alleged that the police entered and searched his residence without permission or justification, and that this action was captured on his surveillance camera. So again, this is a search and seizure case that we're taking a look at that also may involve some arrest warrant issues. The fourth case, complainant alleges that the officer was rude and dismissive of the complainant's report, resulting in a police report not being filed or investigated. So this is a lack of service or rude and dismissive service sort of complaint, which of which there are several. So this is the sort of case where we're monitoring, in part because it is a common complaint, and the monitoring function allows us to make sure those complaints are being adequately investigated by IAD. And the last example we have is the complainant alleged that officers failed to investigate the scene of a hit and run accident in which the complainant was run over and injured. So this one certainly is of the kin of failure to provide service, and involves not just some patrol officers, but some of the crash investigators as well that were tasked with investigating that case. So that isn't a complete list of all the cases that we're monitoring, but I wanted to flag these as sort of the examples of the cases that we are pretty significantly involved in a sort of day-to-day basis at IAD. If we go to the next slide, thank you. So this is all right. So this next section is a report on our involvement in PPD's Use of Force Review Board, or UFRB. I want to spend a couple minutes just introducing what the UFRB is, what we do, and provide just some very high level data about the cases that came before the UFRB a few weeks ago when it was held. So the board is a creature of PPD. It's created by PPD, and its members consist of 4 deputy commissioners and CPOC's executive director. So that's 4 DCs, and Tanya sit on the board. Its function, according to the policy, is to be both an investigative and administrative tool to objectively review the appropriateness or reasonableness of force. All police-involved shootings are reviewed in UFRB. So this is not a complaint-driven process. The person who was shot or a witness doesn't have to submit a complaint in order for it to go through the UFRB process. And the idea is to capture all of these significant uses of force and submit them to this board, so the board can make a determination as to whether or not the use of force, the significant use of force, was in policy. So we have police shootings. We also look at cases involving repeated taser discharges. So if in a given interaction, a taser was discharged multiple times at an individual, that will also trigger this UFRB review function. The ED, our ED, is a voting member of the board, so it's not advisory. We do have a function to the board. The board's vote is a recommendation to the police commissioner. The police commissioner holds the ultimate authority as to whether or not the use of force was appropriate or reasonable. So the PC ultimately agrees or disagrees with the findings of the board. So that's an overview of the board and how it functions. What we've seen is they will take a slate of cases about quarterly. So there'll be a bundle of cases that we'll look at in a given sitting. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, great. So with that, we had a UFRB meeting September 24th. It heard 11 matters. Of those 11 matters, 4 of these were shootings at people. 4 of these were shootings at dogs. We had 2 deer shootings and 1 use of a taser. The incidents generally occurred between 2022 and 2024. So I wanted to pause for a moment to talk a little bit about what we do to be prepared to walk into the board meeting itself. The investigation unit, we receive a substantial amount of information as to each of these shootings, or if it's a taser case, the taser case. If there's body-worn camera footage, we'll receive that. If there are reports, we'll receive those. Photographs, IAD investigator reports, all of that will be collected and delivered to us, which we'll review and analyze and draft our own memoranda and understanding as to whether or not the incidents were within or not within policy, PPD's policy, to prepare Tanya for the hearing. Importantly, right now, I'm just going to be frank. I'm very limited in the details that I can share with you because per PPD policy, the details of each case are confidential and may not be disclosed to the public. So this is a function that we wanted to report to you now in this forum, but in terms of any case details, because they are confidential and subject to PPD's confidentiality policy, I just wanted to flag that we're going to be very limited about sort of details that we might be able to share with the commission in this meeting. Just wanted to pause. I think the next slide is on another subject, so if there are any questions, happy to answer them about UFRB. All right, great. So the last section of the report from the investigative unit is a presentation that I wanted to give the commissioners and the public about investigations more broadly, and to provide an investigations explainer and framework for what we hope to do with the unit and where we see the unit fitting in with this larger oversight apparatus. So as a foundational idea, I think it's important to discuss what an independent investigation is and how it fits in with the system. So an independent investigation is designed to be an impartial fact-finding inquiry that we would conduct to determine whether or not alleged misconduct occurred by PPD officers. And the principal purpose of this is to provide some objective basis to pursue or not pursue discipline against the officer that allegedly engaged in the misconduct. These sort of independent investigations, when they're separate from PPD, increases the transparency of the disciplinary process by virtue of the fact that someone without a badge is collecting the evidence, analyzing it, and coming to some recommendation as to whether or not the alleged misconduct occurred. So for instance, a simple example here, if a person complains that an officer used excessive force, this investigation unit would gather and examine all of the relevant facts and apply them to PPD's policy. So that means, again, reviewing body-worn camera footage, reviewing photographs, conducting interviews of witnesses and of the subject officers and of the witness officers, compile all that information and apply it to the standard that's set out by PPD to determine whether or not that subject officer used excessive force. It's important to note that these sort of investigations, these are administrative investigations and not criminal investigations. The goal of misconduct investigations is principally not to end with a criminal referral, end with a criminal prosecution of an officer. Because they're administrative, the goal is to determine whether or not discipline is appropriate for what the officer did if they in fact engaged in the misconduct, and if it's useful for the ultimate discipliner, information that would help determine what that discipline looks like. And the point is this: the investigations are multi-step, or are initial steps in a multi-step disciplinary process. They're fairly fundamental, they're fairly early on, but they are by no means the end of the disciplinary process, which if we go to the next slide, we'll start talking about what this actually looks like. So this chart is slightly simplified in terms of how a complaint can wind its way through the disciplinary system, but I think it's helpful to start visualizing where investigations sit within these systems for meting out discipline. So if we start in the upper left with the light blue, complaint comes in and we would decide whether or not an investigation is warranted, or in the case of IAD, if a complaint comes in, there will be an investigation. That investigation involves gathering that information, analyzing it, and synthesizing it into some report that's going to be organized, intelligible, and applying the facts to the standards at hand. That process would go through a review and approval step. Right now at IAD, this is something that is done up the chain with PPD, but at any rate, whatever the investigation is would ultimately be essentially signed off on or approved by some superior. So it's not just a line investigator making a determination about a case and it proceeding or not proceeding on that person alone. Based on the approval of the superior, the complaint would be pursued or dismissed, which occurs at, right now, it occurs at the charging unit at PPD, which is going to determine what charges are appropriate for the misconduct that was sustained in the investigation. After the charging, those charges go to PBI, which is a hearing panel, where a panel, which right now includes PPD officers and someone from our office, will determine whether or not the officer is guilty or not guilty of the charges. Of course, the officer can also plead guilty without going through the hearing process. But for the purposes of this, what I want to just illustrate is that the investigation, we are now, 4 steps removed from the initial investigation, and we're still determining what discipline might be meted out to the officer. If the officer is found guilty at PBI, the police commissioner ultimately imposes the discipline. The commissioner is the ultimate decider about discipline. And if in fact the officer is disciplined, there remains the potential for the police officer to arbitrate, essentially appeal that decision to an arbitrator for yet another review. Here's the sort of 20,000-foot view that I want to offer to the commission. Given this system, really first 2 initial points. Fair and reliable outcomes in this whole process really begin at that first stage and second stage, right? A complaint can come in, but all of the facts that are going to be relevant for everything that comes later, everything that's relevant to supervisor approval, to charging, to arbitration, all of those are going to come from the investigator. And so it's going to be extremely important for investigators to have fulsome access to information and timely access to information in order to provide accurate and reliable data for the deciders down the road, right? Which means we are going to need access to lots of body-worn camera footage, lots of access to police records, to police radio recordings, anything that you can think of that could be relevant to the alleged misconduct, we are going to need access to in order to conduct that investigation. And the second point is this: investigations can't exist in a vacuum. We can't just have a complaint come in and an investigation happen and end, and that is the end of the case. There needs to be a point to the investigation, and that point is that there's a potential that the police commissioner could ultimately impose discipline on the officer, or that the investigation yields information that either exonerates the officer or doesn't sustain the allegation. But the point is that the investigation can't just be the end of the process. There has to be some other mechanisms in place that build upon and follow those initial critical fact gathering steps. If we could please go to the next slide. Okay, great. Yeah, so I won't belabor this point. They continue to require, the investigations require access to relevant materials and witnesses and fit within the structure to serve their purpose. If we could please go to the next slide. Thank you. So I just want to flag, if we understand where we fit within that system as it exists now, some potential issues. We have legislation that authorizes us to conduct independent investigations. That's clear on the face of the statute. And that was a statute that was backed by more than 500,000 voters in Philadelphia. So I think we, from the jump, have the authorization to conduct these investigations. Here's what I want to flag, because these investigations can't exist in a vacuum. City's contract with the FOP provides some language that actually is going to be helpful to just display. Danny, do you have that document handy? Thank you. Okay, great. So
Can you
Danny
see
just
that
put,
okay?
yeah, thanks. Danny just put a PDF up on the screen, and there are really 4 pages that I want to walk through. It's 42 pages long, but there are really 4 pages that I think are worth spending some time with. The first is this first page. We can see that this is going to be a decision from the American Arbitration Association between the city and the Fraternal Order of Police. Okay. So this was a contract that was executed in 2021. Danny, if we could go to page 8. As we scroll through, what you'll see is the panel made some findings. You can continue to scroll down, right? And we get to section 2. After the 40 paragraphs of findings, we get to this award section, and this is the part of the contract that awards certain things to the police union. So if we just continue to scroll down to page 11, this is still within that award section. Thank you. We'll see that paragraph 18 is a paragraph that says discipline. So this is the award section of the contract as it relates to discipline of PPD officers. 8.b says the department shall revise the disciplinary and police board of inquiry procedures to include the following. And there's going to be a laundry list of things, but what I want to key in on is on page 12, the list of things here. Yep, scroll down a little bit more, Danny. We're going to look at number 11. Thanks. So number 11, this is the contractual award between the city and the police union. Number 11 says, the department can make other changes necessary to effectuate the Citizen Police Oversight Commission legislation enacted by City Council, but only with the written consent of the FOP regarding any matters that involve a mandatory subject of bargaining. Okay, so that provision provides that the city and the PPD can change its disciplinary process, but only with the permission of the FOP regarding any matters that involve a mandatory subject of bargaining. I want to highlight that language and just flip back to the deck if you could, Danny. Great, thanks. So right now, I think the top line report is this. We can talk all day long about what this language may mean to whatever, any lawyer's opinion about the effect of this language. What I want to report is the real life effect, setting aside what any legal position may be. The real life effect is that in order for us to do all of the steps or be plugged in with all of the steps, the information, the access to BVI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we face real obstacles negotiating both with the city and with the FOP, in part because of this language. So I don't want to get too down a rabbit hole about what the language means or anything like that, because the upshot from the unit right now is that this is a roadblock that we should be aware of as it exists today and as we're experiencing it today. And that could impede, for instance, access to relevant materials, and our ability to interface with the other parts of this system. Right, so the other obstacles I want to flag for the commission right now that we're working to resolve are access to investigatory materials. We do have access, we were granted access recently to evidence.com in terms of being able to see a list of things, but not actually being able to view all of the evidence on it. So that's certainly a step in the right direction in terms of access to relevant materials, but we're not done working on these issues because there is a host of other information that we're going to need to do misconduct investigations. And lastly, I want to flag, of course, we are somewhat resource limited. We right now have a staff of 2. There's myself and a staff investigator. And in order to really ramp up and scale up, we're going to need in the future a substantial increase in the investigators, because investigating, as you're painfully aware, is a very time intensive and resource intensive process that is simply going to require more staff. So that's a initial summary of investigations, where we fit in, and some of the obstacles that we're seeing right now that we're working to navigate on. But I wanted to open this up and see if you had any questions. And if not, I think that's the end of the deck, and I'll move it on to Leah.
The commissioners do have some questions or some comments, because I think this has been one of the areas that CPOC has been criticized the most on, is around this question around investigations. So I'm curious to see if you all have any thoughts or comments.
This is Commissioner DeBose. I'm pleased that this investigatory process continues to expand, and I'm extremely pleased at the level of transparency that we are experiencing as commissioners and what the public is hearing in terms of how the process is going forward. We understand one of the problems we had before, people were calling for information while cases were in process, but we fully understand the importance of keeping all of this information confidential so as not to, breach the integrity of the process, and make sure everyone gets both offending officers and offended members of our community. So we want to continue to make sure that everyone is treated fairly and justice is served. That's part of the whole mission of this whole CPOC. So I'm glad that we're getting a more in-depth analysis of what's going on and a clearer understanding of how these things are run. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, and just to echo that sentiment, the investigation unit, of course, as we continue to build and continue to look towards independent investigations, confidentiality, understanding both confidentiality and also reporting to the public what we can. These are top of mind issues for us, because on the one hand, absolutely, we want to be able to share what we can with the public in terms of allegations, outcomes, et cetera, and there are going to be limitations on that, but there is that function that we're very aware of. And on the other hand, there are going to be instances where there are going to be allegations that don't pan out against an officer, or there are going to be allegations that there are probably going to be allegations that are not true against an officer. And we're very mindful that that confidentiality can also serve the purpose of protecting officers that did nothing wrong from facing some collateral consequences from misplaced allegations against them. So we're very aware of confidentiality, and I just want to echo how important it is for us as we build the unit out as well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can I be heard?
It's your meeting, Chair, but absolutely.
So I think me and my fellow commissioners understood the role of the contract of the FOP since January of this year, thanks to our General Counsel, Catherine Twigg. it's good that the community can finally hear it. It's been a lot of stories out, and as a commission, we decided to handle it in a manner that we have handled the media attention surrounding the Citizens Police Oversight Commission's investigations, independent investigations. So one thing I do want to highlight is on the need for confidentiality. The need to wait and the outcome of an investigation and decisions, because we understand that we don't want to taint this in any investigation. We don't want to provide anyone any information that will swing any investigation one way or another. We want fair and just investigations for the community. And having the community hear this, I think it's a big step forward. The steps we've taken towards this process of independent investigations, being transparent about it at the moment, was really needed. And I'd like to thank you, Nicholas Cotter, Director of Investigations, Nicholas Cotter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The only other thing I'll just reiterate is, transparency does not mean getting confidential information and simply making it public, and that is not the intention of the investigation unit and not the intention of the agency. And so it's really encouraging to hear that. I hope we're on a path where we can carefully navigate these issues, right, of being able to report out what we can while also being fair to officers, being fair to the public, being fair to the complainants who come to us asking for an investigation and some justice. So I think that will be certainly a balancing act, and I look forward to working with everyone to find a path forward on that. I think that's Danny, I think that's the end of this slide. Yep, that's the end of my presentation. So I'll pass the microphone to Talia unless there are any last comments.
Okay, well, hearing none, I guess I can take it from here. Good evening, everyone. My name is Talia Grimmage. I am the Director of Outreach and Constituent Services. As you can see on your screen here, I have the esteemed privilege of leading this group of outreach superstars and MVPs. We have Julian Jordan, Damon Green, Jeriana Hernandez, and Jody Eichel, who are a part of this team. We are responsible for planning and organizing the majority of the forward-facing function of the agency, our community engagement efforts, town hall discussions. We give trainings and information to the community about our complaint process, what our agency does, who we are. And we bring resources to the community. So there's quite a bit that we do. And of course, we're also responsible for the communications of the agency. And so just listening to my colleague Nick talk a little bit about some of the barriers or with investigations, if the community may not have been here this evening, our unit is definitely interested in finding some creative ways to get that content in front of the folks that need to hear it. You can go ahead to the next slide. So just to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have been up to for the last few weeks. Our staff attended the Feria del Barrio community event. This was an opportunity for us to spend some time in the community, bring in some resources and some CPOC swag. We also went to Council Member O'Rourke's Justice Impacted Community Fair. That community fair was targeted at individuals who have been justice involved. And so it was a great chance to meet with members of the community and some other agencies that work with returning community members from incarceration to get them some very important resources. And they also had a expungement clinic. So if there were people that had questions about maybe getting things expunged from their records, that was also available as well. As usual, we gave another oversight presentation to Recruit Class 404. As a standard part of the curriculum, CPOC gives a oversight lecture to the recruits before they graduate and are deployed to their various districts and assignments. It is a really good opportunity for us to talk to them about oversight in Philadelphia, the history of it, how we arrived at this moment of this wonderful agency that we all are a part of, ways that we work collaboratively with the police department, but primarily what our mission is and how we promote accountability and transparency from PPD. And so that involves some discussion, that involves learning more about the recruits, why they decided to, become officers, where they're from. And we always show a documentary and talk a little bit about some of the things that happen in Philadelphia and how some of the same things this city is seeing happens nationally in other places. Next slide. Yes, so we had an amazing Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. This event, if you missed it, I don't know what to tell you because it was a moment and you had to be there. This was an amazing event. We celebrated in style. It was held at the core at Esperanza in the Kensington section. We were able to have some delicious food, some community resources. The music was phenomenal. We had dancing from local dance troupes. And this event featured some Q&A between Bill Garcia, he is the executive director of the Mayor's Office of Latino Engagement, and CPOC's own executive director, Tanya McClary. Our commissioners were there as well. And the discussion was around ways that CPOC can engage and connect with the diverse Hispanic communities in Philadelphia. And we celebrated the resilient friends and neighbors in the Kensington neighborhood. Next slide, please. Okay, we were asked to moderate a 2024 Workplace Equity and Inclusion webinar hosted by IREX. And this was with some of the 2024 Mandela Washington Fellows that were assigned to different agencies and companies in the US. And so we moderated a virtual panel with several fellows. They were from Botswana, Sierra Leone, Angola, and Zimbabwe. And this discussion provided the fellows an opportunity to talk a little bit about their experience in the United States and how their host organization's mission aligns with the work that they engage in abroad and what they learned in the context of workplace equity and inclusion and how they plan to apply what they learned to their work back at home. Next slide. Yes. So we also participated in the Department of Behavioral Health's Immigrant and Refugee Resource Fair. And so CPOC staff joined several city agencies and orgs. This was during Welcome Week. And we talked with the community members about our Language Access Project and the Language Access Survey, which is a survey we put together aimed at improving police response to immigrant communities who require interpretation and translation services. And so that is an ongoing project, and our goal is to get the word out, to talk to many of these communities, to just get feedback on how they believe the police department is functioning when it comes to translation and interpretation. We also attended, I think this was maybe the second or third year in a row, State Rep Chris Robb. Every year he has a fall Grown Folks Festival, which brings, the Germantown community together with food, music, resources. And so it's always a pleasure to attend that. And we were there just this past week. We also attended the Northwest Police Chaplain 6th Annual Hero in the Community Awards. Now, this award ceremony celebrates a lot of the community members and officers that work to improve the communities that they live and work in each day. And so it is sponsored by the police districts and the chaplains in the 5th District, the 14th, 35th, and 39th. So if you are curious about where you can catch up with the outreach team, we are always moving and shaking and booked and busy. And our commissioners, when they come out to join us at events, this is just a list of where we will be next. This weekend is pretty packed. Tomorrow, we will be at a police-assisted diversion community resource fair. On the 12th, which is Saturday, we will be at the Wingahocking Neighbor Day. The 13th, we will be at the 4th annual Lacone e Allegra event. And then from the 13th to the 17th, CPOC staff and some of the commissioners will be attending the NACO conference. NACO is the National Association for the Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. It is a collection of agencies and groups all over the country. And they are not people that just do police oversight. There's also prison reform. And so those groups get together once a year for a retreat where they talk about best practices, they give lectures on different things. And it is always a great time for Philly to be there because we get to see where we are in alignment with some of our peers. There are many, many civilian oversight agencies that are small, that are just getting started, that don't have the authority that we have and the amount of staff we have and the board that we have. So it is nice to just spend some time with people in varying degrees of their creation and talk about our work and hear about them. And again, just a brief reminder, October is an action-packed month, but it is also a month for awareness. And so I didn't want to end this part without acknowledging that Hispanic Heritage Month has come to a close. October is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, LGBTQ+ History Month. And listen, 365 days a year, you know, that's history that we need all year long. And of course, National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So keep these things in mind, and we hope to see you at one of the events, maybe this weekend or in the future. And if anyone has any questions, I can answer them now. If not, I can turn it back over to Tanya. Thank you for the space.
If you can also, there's also another event happening tomorrow that might be of interest to people in the faith community that will be attending, if you want to say something about that.
Yes, so I'm not sure if that's open to the public. I think it's just the friends and family of some people being inducted, but we can, you know, definitely talk more about it afterwards. But the police chaplains all over the city are being inducted together tomorrow at Mount Airy Church of God. So that'll be nice to see, and we can definitely share more information if that's open to the community at large.
Did any of the commissioners have comments or thoughts on our outreach and training division?
Well, if no one has a question for me, I have one. I am just curious because I don't know how many commissioners may be going, but does anybody want to share maybe what they're looking forward to going to NACO? That's coming up. You know, is there anything that you look forward to doing or learning?
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting with other commissioners on other oversight agencies and getting their feedback on how they operate in their organizations and what their goals are in their organizations, as well as sharing my goals and the goals of the commission in Philadelphia. I'm also looking forward to just seeing the progress from other agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Police oversight isn't a thing that started in 1776 when this country was formed. So it's a rather new thing when we look at, as we come on the brink of 2026, the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, we now have enough oversight agencies to have a conference. So I'm really interested in just hearing from other people of their vision and what they're doing in their city, and sharing what we're doing in our city and visions, and hopefully we can come back to Philadelphia with a stronger planning moving forward, with stronger ideas to serve the city of Philadelphia. I'm really excited. I'm really excited. So even this agency, just to see that now that the commissioners are can go to the NACOL. I remember that was a thing one time about commissioners attending NACOL. So just having us attend NACOL now shows the progress of this agency. And I want to thank everybody that had a foot in the steps of making this happen. So
And Commissioner Bennett, thank you for sharing that. You know, as somebody, I've been to, you know, the NACOL conference before. And one of the things that I take away from it is just the shared connection with other people, because, you know, we understand that when you do this type of work, there can be barriers. There can be some tough days. You know, sometimes this work is heavy when you're talking about loss of life or the historic things that have happened to different communities. And so sometimes it can be easy to just see yourself on an island as one little agency, but when you are in a room with other people and you see that you are not the only one experiencing things, you know, when you see other people ask you questions about, well, how did you get this done? And wow, we'd really like to do that. And you see things that you may want to aspire to. It just really gives you an opportunity to feel the shared experience of people that work in oversight. So I hope you have a great time. Hope everybody enjoys. It's in Arizona. So, you know, hope they have some good food, and we'd love to hear about it when everybody gets back.
I do have a question. I do have a question, another question, right?
Yes.
It's 95 degrees next week. What are we supposed to wear? I've been thinking about this for a long time. It's 95 degrees. What is the dress code?
Something comfortable.
At 95 degrees.
Definitely Eagles wear, and just to see the reaction. So
All right.
yes, but have a good time, everyone.
And hopefully, I think in the next couple of years, we're gonna put in to have the conference come to Philly. So I'm looking forward to working with the agency and the board on that. Who knows, 2026, NACO might be coming to Philly. We will see.
NACOL in 2026 in Philadelphia is amazing.
Any other questions from Outreach Director? All right. Well, we are doing something new at this meeting where we're going to be discussing a topic that impacts oversight. And so when I saw our Director of Investigations presentation about some of the constraints about what's happening in investigation, I thought this would be a good time to talk with the commissioners about just how this looks across the country. And so it reminded me that back on April 27th of 2021, the Washington Post featured an article entitled, "When Communities Try to Hold Police Accountable, Law Enforcement Fights Back. Civilian Oversight is Undermined by Politicians and Police Who Contend Citizens Are Ill-Equipped to Judge Officers." And we're dropping a link to the article in the chat. I would encourage any of those of you that are watching and others to really go back and read this article, because it looked at a systemic problem across the country that has to do with problems with oversight agencies. And so we can go to the next slide. So, you know, for those of us that do this work, the reason why conferences like NACOL are important is because those are sometimes the only people that can understand the complexity, the nuances of what it means to do police oversight in any city. And I'm sure our community knows, but in case you don't, Philadelphia is the 4th largest police department in the country. And so often what happens with our agency has ripple effects across the country. And so I want the community to know, because this office has been under a lot of critique, that it is not for lack of will of this agency. I have to say that when I stepped into this agency, I have some of the most dedicated and talented staff there is. I would put my staff up against any of my colleagues at an oversight agency, and I know that we will come out on top. And so, you know, so when I hear a lot of the critiques, a lot of it to me is because I think the community really doesn't understand the challenges. And so at the time that this article was written back in 2021, there were more than 160 municipalities and counties that had implemented some form of civilian oversight. So that could have just been a review board. There are some cities where we only have a board, like the commissioners. There are other offices that have, instead of doing a quote unquote oversight agency, they have an inspector general's office. And there's other places that have independent monitors. And so here in the city of Philadelphia, you kind of have it all, right? You have an inspector general's office, but the agency that is tasked with oversight of the Philadelphia Police Department is this agency and the board. And so you are lucky to have the monitoring, the independent monitor, which would be like me and my agency, and also a board that will be made up of 9 people soon. There's 4 now, but they're doing a lot. They're 4 powerful and mighty, but there'll be 9 soon. And at the time, there were another 130 localities that were trying to implement some type of civilian oversight. And so when George Floyd happened, that really pushed a lot of cities to say, wait a minute, is something going on in our city? How could the death of him, how could the death of Breonna Taylor, how could just, you know, probably any city has their version of that. How could Eddie Irizarry happen? How could these things be happening? We have to really try to get some kind of oversight of the police department. Next slide. And so I want to talk about some of the problems, and then I really want to open it up to the commissioners around your thoughts around some of these things. And so I'm just giving some high level problems that happen with oversight, not just here in Philadelphia, but generally, because I don't want people in the city of Philadelphia to say there's something wrong with CPOC, right? There's something wrong with our oversight agency. These are struggles that are happening. And so one of the biggest problems is a systemic lack of accountability for police misconduct. In many cities, the police aren't held accountable. There's no accountability for the police misconduct that happens in the city. Also, well-meaning reform attempts that end in failure and frustration. You have no idea after George Floyd how many people, like even here in Philadelphia, we had PAC, right? Now we have CPOC. When I was in Dallas, they had a reform board and they transitioned to an oversight board. So a lot of cities are saying, well, if we had something in place, it's not working. They need more power. They need more teeth. And so there are a lot of reform efforts out there, but a lot of them end in failure and frustration. And I think that the community here in Philadelphia has been pointing out some of the places where they say that we're failing, and people are getting frustrated around it, right? But I'm glad that when Director Cotto gave his presentation, he walked you through what some of those problems were. It's not the will of the board or the office. A lot of times it's some of the reform attempts that don't really take into account. So when it says CPOC, you have all of these powers. It doesn't take into account that to realize some of those powers, it's going to take a whole lot more, right? So it's there on a piece of paper, but in order to make that paper come to life, so it's like a skeleton and we're supposed to put the meat on the bones, putting that meat on the bones can take quite a bit in many places. Also having the authority to recommend disciplinary actions that can then ultimately get rejected by the chief and arbitrators, I'm sorry. So in many cities, we can recommend things, right? But we don't have the final say. So the police chief has the final say on discipline. The police chief, or in this case, a commissioner, can do these things, and we only have the ability to recommend, right? And so also lacking the needed power and resources to be effective. You heard Director Carlos talked about, he got 2 folk, right? And so in some offices, you have like 2 or 3 staff trying to take on an entire police department, trying to take on an entire internal affairs division, trying to take on an entire whatever it is. And so there's a lack of resources, and also sometimes the lack of the authority to bring these things forward. And then this is a big one. And Director Carlo talked about that, limitations because of the strict collective bargaining agreements with police unions. And then even cities that don't have collective bargaining, they know almost every city has an officer bill of rights. And so anything outside of that collective bargaining or anything outside of that officer bill of rights is going to be a really uphill battle for the oversight agency to take on in order to get all the powers that it should be entitled to based on that legislation. Next slide. And so here are some of the also the law enforcement perspectives that are evasive across the country. Law enforcement will say that civilian monitors, we're well-meaning, but we're not but we're ill-equipped to judge them as officers, right? Because we're civilians. They often argue that we don't have the expertise and the experience of trained law enforcement professionals, so why should we let you oversee us? Right? That's kind of universal. Some of the community perspectives that also hinder the work. All over the country, the police are still doing what they want to do without any redress. So what's up? Right? We got a CPOC, but you know, things are happening. People are still being mistreated. You know, what's going on? And then from our response, the civilian practitioners, all the pushback from the police, the lack of the political support for the civilian agency has prompted many people to resign, right? So this is the kind of job where I say, you know, if you ever interview somebody for a job and it looks like they changing jobs every 2 or 3 years, you start to say, what's up? But in this field, when you see somebody leave after 2 or 3 years and go to another oversight agency, they don't ask any questions because they understand the realities of what happens, all the pushback, all the not feeling like you're moving things ahead. And so in this field, you will find a lot of sometimes turnovers, not only from staff, but also from boards, where, you know, people like pulling their hair out and saying, how are we going to be effective? And so next slide, please. Is that it? That might, and so one of the things that I want to talk about is why it's important though. So we know all of our obstacles, but why it's important that a CPOC exists. And I'll say a few things about why it exists is because an outsider perspective on policing is crucial in identifying and stopping officer misconduct. And so on a lot of these offices and boards, you have lawyers and auditors and others with community experience. So sometimes just literally having a set of eyes that is not part of the police department has value within itself. And so I want to look at why civilian oversight is necessary. So it does many things. It protects human rights. That is part of our job as this oversight agency, is to protect the human rights of people that are encountering the police in the city of Philadelphia. That is part of our mandate and part of what we do. Also, having oversight promotes constitutional policing. It is the ability of CPOC, this agency, and the board to look and say, are we doing constitutional policing? Are we following 21st century policing here in this city? And so having this agency and board promotes constitutional policing. It also increases the public confidence and trust in the police. This is one of the things when I'm fighting with police departments, I'm like, if you work with us, this is what we can help you do. I hope that you want the community of Philadelphia to have more confidence and trust in the work that you do. But when you shut the agency out, the oversight agency, if I was a community member, I would say, well, if they don't want to share stuff with the oversight agency, is there something for them to hide? What is going on? And so not letting us in does not help us help the police to build confidence and trust in the department. One of the other things is that we build the bridge between the law enforcement and the public. We have different access to PPD than the average person, the average community member in the city of Philadelphia. And because of that, we can be a bridge between the law enforcement and the public. And that is an extremely, extremely important role. That's why you heard Director Grimmage, part of it's outreach, but it's also constituent services. Part of this office's job is to make sure that anybody that has concerns, that we have a constituent services arm that really helps to understand what it is and to bring those issues forward to the law, to PPD. It also supports effective policing. There are ideas that we are going to be able to bring that help them be more effective, that help them do their job. It ensures greater accountability. If CPOC is able to look at the things that are going on in the department and to say these things are needed, these things are good, or these things need to be changed, it gives greater accountability for the police department here in the city of Philadelphia. And the last thing that I'll say before I open it up, because I know I've said a lot, is that it enhances risk management. This is one of the areas that I think police departments and city law departments and others don't understand about our role. Part of our job is to help you do risk management. If we see officers out there shooting people in a certain way or doing this and the other, we recommend you should have some training. You should implement these things, or early warning system. You should do these things. We're helping you manage your risk, because I don't think this is a shock to anybody that here in the city of Philadelphia and other cities, we pay out millions of dollars in lawsuits because of police misconduct. And so part of our job is to say, PPD, here are some of the things that you can implement to help in these kind of manners so that these kind of things do not happen. And so, commissioners, I'm kind of curious about kind of your thoughts on some of these things, what you've been thinking about. And so I'm going to stop talking now and turn it over to the board to see what kind of their reflections are on some of these issues here in Philadelphia, but also across the country.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the room and call on each board member and allow them to share their piece. We'll start with Commissioner Hakeem PA. If you need more time, just say pass. Commissioner Elder DeBose.
Okay, so thank you, Director McCleary, for bringing out this article. This is a beautiful synopsis of the kind of work that we did preliminarily while we were still under PAC. We recognize, having communicated with the board and the officials of PAC, that it was understaffed and underfunded. And by recognizing that, we wanted to implement something that would give citizens a voice and give it teeth. So ultimately, we did a series of town hall meetings. And when I say we, I'm talking about Power Live Free. We did a series of town hall meetings in which we explored what oversight agencies around the nation look like. And we looked at about 10 of them, and they're all on the powerinterfaith.org website. We looked at Chicago, San Francisco, Oakland, California, Atlanta, Georgia, Detroit, Michigan. We looked at about 10 agencies to really understand what our possibilities were, because we had a vision for building out a toothy agency. This is why I'm really glad to see the kind of work that's happening under Director McClary and this staff, because this is what we were looking for. We had done our preliminary work, and Cato mentioned the thrust that happened after the murder of George Floyd. We were looking at a 3 to 5 year process, but the murder of George Floyd expedited our process tremendously. And we were able to extract best practices from all over the country and come up with legislation by which we are in the process. We've come a long way and we have a ways to go, but we are now in the process of building out an agency in Philadelphia that, as Director McClary has said, will become the model. Many of the agencies we looked at around the country, they were in their 10th, 12th, 15th iteration of becoming an independent oversight agency. So we took their best practices, we put them all down, we threw everything against the wall to see what would stick and what would really make the difference for the people of Philadelphia. Because the bottom line is, while we have good officers in the PPD, while we have good people who really believe in justice, there are some, we discovered, in blue who were not able to police themselves. So we're glad for the process we're making. I encourage you, I believe that this article may have been dropped in the chat to expose you, but it's a synopsis of the work we've done. It's almost like they were looking over our shoulder. But if you don't have a chance to read this article, please take a look on powerinterfaith.org, a series of, I guess it was 8 town hall meetings that examined what was going on around the country. And it became the basis, not the impetus, but the basis for the content of our legislation. So thank you, Director McClary, for bringing this to the attention of both the commissioners and the staff and the public. And we're continuing to strive. This is our second iteration. We started with the PAC and we found out that it was lacking. But now we are really moving towards something that is substantial, and we are exponentially increasing the number of complaints that result in favor, not for simply favor for the police, but favor for the complainants. So we're glad. We're not anti-police. We're pro-justice. And we believe that this kind of conversation can move us closer toward the same. Justice for all. Thank you.
Commissioner Solomon.
Commissioner Solomon here. I think Commissioner Du Bois did a great job at like really speaking for me. I don't really feel like I have anything to add from my perspective. So I'm going to pass. But I am very thankful about what was shared.
We'll go back to Commissioner. Oh, you got your hand raised, Catherine.
I
That's
do.
big.
It's
I
actually
apologize.
just a relevant update for you. Commissioner PA just texted me to let me know he lost service, and that was why I think he was dropped from the meeting. So he sends his apologies.
All is well. So with that, it'll be on me. I appreciate what you shared with us, right? And I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you've shared. It gives oversight gives a watch. They call us watchdogs for a reason, right? It gives a watch over the safety of the community. I think oversight is needed for the safety of the community, because without oversight, without someone bridging that gap somewhere, that proverbial void, then preventing crime becomes harder. And we're not even talking about solving it. We're talking about preventing crime. When we can bridge that gap with the community, we fulfill a lot of the distrust throughout the city. Also, I think this agency, at the same time, we always say that over 500,000 people voted for oversight in the city of Philadelphia. So I believe that this agency brings people together. This agency unifies the people behind one common goal. We don't have these meetings in the public just to have these meetings in the public. A lot of times we address the public in these meetings with our ideas, our where we're going as an agency. It's a public announcement. A lot of times when we go to these meetings, we're not only asked about oversight, we're asked about organization. So when we talk about oversight, oversight, in my opinion, helps build community, helps strengthen community. And I think the decisions that we've made as commissioners and as CPOC, commissioners and staff alike, has always been what we feel is in the best interest of the community. So I just want to highlight the safety component of CPOC, the community unification component of CPOC as well.
And I also want to thank the commissioners for their thoughts, and to also just put in a plea to the community of Philadelphia. Continue to work with us, right? Don't give up on us. As you heard our chair say, we are still growing. As you heard Commissioner DeBose say, we are still, they knew that this was going to be a process, right? And so hang in there with us, fight with us, support us, because I do want to say, and it's not a shock, even when you read this article, there is an attack on oversight across the country. There are many states that are trying to limit what oversight officers can do. There are many fraternal order police that are trying to bargain things. I mean, there are actually some places where it's bargained in their contract that they can't have oversight in a particular city. And then there's also places where they're trying to get rid of people altogether. So I have been talking to my friends in Florida, where oversight agencies are being shut down because state legislation has said there can be no more oversight agencies in the state of Florida. So continue to be with us, continue to share any concerns and support. So I am putting out a plea to support this agency and this board as we go forward to do all those things in red, protect and serve and make more accountable the police department, because ultimately that's going to make you safer as a community and make your life more productive. And so just I'm putting out that impassioned plea to just hang in there with CPOC as we continue to grow in what we are charged to do here in the city of Philadelphia. All right. So Chair, I think it's back to you.
And with that being said, let me go back to this agenda. It is now in the session we've all waited for. Community comments. I'm gonna read this for everyone, right? Because I want everyone to ensure I read this every week, or every month, to make sure I get it right word for word, to show that we have been consistent in how we handle community comments in this agency. So I'm gonna pick up my little paper again and get back to reading, all right? Community comment and colloquy. We welcome public comment and feedback. Please address your comment to the chair. If you would like to speak, please provide your full name. We will not be unmuting anonymous participants. If you are a member of the media, please identify yourself as such. You can indicate that you would like to speak by raising your hand or sending a request to the meeting host in the chat. You may also submit public comment through the chat. You will have 3 minutes to address the commissioners. I will keep time and notify the board when 3 minutes have elapsed. Any documents or follow-up communication can be submitted to cpoc@phila.gov. You can submit your documents and follow-up by emailing cpoc@phila.gov. Public comments should be limited to the topics covered in this meeting. All public commenters must refrain from offensive language, threats, or harassments. Participants that violate these instructions will be removed from the meeting immediately. While we welcome your public comments and feedback, commissioners may not be able to respond to your question or comments during tonight's meeting. Every attempt will be made to follow up by phone or email after the meeting. You can contact cpoc@phila.gov or call 215-685-0891. That is 215-685-0891. And with that, I open for public comments.
I don't think anybody registered to speak, Hassan. I also don't see any hands raised. And there haven't been any questions in the chat, so we'll see if there's anything that gets submitted.
We'll give them the 3 minutes that we give for public comment. Start that time now. Is there anything else that we haven't addressed while we're going over these public comments? My clock shows it a minute is passed.
I guess while we're waiting, we can, it's in the agenda, but if folks haven't seen on our social media, we have announced the PBI hearing dates. I think there is one adjustment that we just found out from the PBI folks. So we'll update on social media, but I believe the 30th is not a PBI cap anymore.
Mm.
But the 24th and October 24th and October 31st are caps, and the public are welcome as they are open to the public. And I'll put, while we're waiting in the chat, our mailing list link.
Okay. And so everyone is aware, once again, our holiday meeting dates for the remainder of the year will be November 14th, November 21st, December 12th, and December 19th. And with that, that has been 3 minutes. Is there a motion floating around? Is someone making a motion? Any commissioner making a motion? Are we just gonna sit here in silence, or is there a motion floating around?
Chair, I'm not looking at an agenda, but is it time for a motion for
To adjourn, I believe.
adjournment?
It's that time again. That time again.
Well, this is Commissioner DeBose, and I'd like to move that the meeting, having completed our agenda, the meeting be adjourned.
Do I hear anyone second that motion?
Commissioner Solomon, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Ah.
Good evening, everyone. That concludes our CPOC meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.